So I now leave the floor to Rolf, which will give a lecture that I know it's quite close to the lecture that he gave to the United Nations ministers in Doha a few weeks ago. So Rolf, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just trying to, I guess, something like share my screen. Right. So hello everybody. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to do a lecture here, and this time it's from Shanghai Jiaotong University, where the ShanghAI Lecture series actually started in 2009. So I think this is for me also very nice to be able to do that. So since the title or the theme of today's lecture is the future or future trends, I thought I would give you a presentation that I just last week or 10 days ago had in Doha in Qatar. So there was a meeting of ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, which is an organization of the United Nations, and there were like 350 ministers, from all countries of the United Nations. And this was basically one-to-one, more or less, the presentation. It's called Living with Robots, the Next Generation of Intelligent Machines. Right. And this is a Toyota factory. Actually, I forgot to mention something. I think after the lecture series, Fabio here, it's late afternoon, and so many of us are thinking about going for a drink after the lecture. Now imagine the following scenario. You go into a bar or a lounge, and then you discover that instead of humans, there are robots greeting you and serving you in the lounge. What will it be like? I will come back to this point later. Now, of course, robots, we all know that robots have been around for a long time, but typically we didn't really notice them because they were behind factory walls. Now here is a Toyota factory, and these are welding robots. Maybe Nathan, can you play the first video if you have that one? You did the someone's very... More sound, can you get a bit more sound? Because really, nobody wants to be in this environment. So it's dangerous, it's unhealthy. Okay, I think that's good. Thank you, Nathan. You can stop the movie. So nobody really wants to be in that environment. But basically all the nice things that we have today, like mobile phones, like entertainment electronics, household appliances, fancy cars, motorbikes, all that stuff, we would not have were it not for the robots that do the job in the factories. But there was very little public awareness. But there is an interesting recent development, and I think the robots came to large public awareness by events like that. This is from CBS News. So not a technological magazine, but general, let's say, news magazine. Google buys 8 robotics companies in 6 months. Now, in the meantime, I think they've bought over 30 or 35 companies from artificial intelligence and robotics. And then the general public actually became aware of this, that these robots are around. And since then, the robots have been in the media a lot, and not only technological journals, but economic journals. If a topic appears in an economic journal, it means that it has significance for our economy and for society in general. And on the right is from Financial Times about Volkswagen, trying to replace the retiring baby boomers, with robots. Okay, and what's been happening over the last 1 or 2 decades is that the robots have started leaving the factory floors and have started coming into our own environment. And I think the champion of this was, I think it started almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago, with the Honda Asimo robot, who has cost an awful lot of money for the development, but it's really nice, one of the most advanced, and I think really beautiful robots. He is definitely the champion. But in many other ways, robots have come into our lives. Of course, we all know the vacuum cleaners, you know, the Roombas from iRobot. In homes for the elderly, this cuddly baby seal, and then on the right you can see a hospital robot where doctors can make measurements, interact with the patients through the robot, or we all know, of course, Amazon's drone, delivery drone for packages. On the upper right you see SoftBank's Pepper robot in a cafe interacting with the customer, and Pepper will be sold next year for $2,000. And Nestle, the company, the big coffee company, has bought 1,000 in Japan to sell coffee machines for Nestle. So as salespeople, and of course we know autonomous driving. And by the way, not only Google is doing autonomous driving, many other companies are doing autonomous driving. In China they do a lot, in Japan almost every car company is doing autonomous driving. Volvo is going to start a large experiment with 100 cars in 2016 during rush hour, where they have to drive 50 kilometers. And here is a security robot on the right from Nightscope from Mountain View, California. Budgie, a shopping trolley, you can put your bags, shopping bags on the trolley. Or I think an interesting robot in the lower left, if you need a particular article, a particular type of screw or other device, you can just show it to the robot. The robot's connected to a huge database and will try to match exactly your screw against the database and will tell you exactly where you can find it. No human assistant in the shop will tell you that. This robot is superior to the human assistants. And here, of course, also very tight into what we see is that humans are more and more going to very tightly interact with the robots, which of course implies that the requirements for these robots are also very different. Here is Hiroshi Ishiguro with the Geminoid, a clone, basically a clone of himself, right? So here we can ask the question, who or which is the robot and which is the human? It's not so obvious. And then interesting question is also, why do you think one is the robot and one is the human? Okay, interesting experiment here, a beautiful robot, also a model, on display at Takashimaya. Takashimaya is a upscale Japanese department store chain, and they have a robot, or will have a robot on display like this at Takashimaya in Shanghai. They also have an outlet here in Shanghai, China. And this is Roboy, one of the robots, also very closely surrounded by people. You know, now coming into the vicinity of people. This is a popular German TV show, and I think we saw a lot about Roboy last week from the lecture by Raphael Hostetler. So I won't go into Roboy a lot. Here's another android singing with human musicians. So here, basically, this is the robot and singing with human musicians. I think it was a successful performance. But also, robots can conduct wedding ceremonies. Nathan, can you play the? It's actually the movie is by Nathan. He made it at the ceremony. So just beginning.
The wedding ceremony is about to start.
In the upper right corner. Okay, I think that's okay. Yep. Thank you, Nathan. Okay. Yeah. So even the civil servants, you know, in the government, city government offices can be replaced by robots. As this basically goes. Okay. Now this is just an overview of some of the service robots that we already have. you know, here, like everybody's favorite in the right lower corner, a hamburger robot that produces 60 hamburgers per minute. Lawnmowers, toy robots, and then in the left upper corner you have drones. These are flying robots, drones. You know, this guy does lampshades doing a nice dance, and of course self-driving cars. And on the lower left is a robot selling ice creams to kids. And in the service robotic area, in the medical area, and we will have a conference here at Jiao Tong University in just a few days about this, these kinds of topics. And if you look in the media, everywhere you will find that delivery robots, brain-controlled wheelchairs, exoskeletons, bionic limbs, surgical tools, assistive technologies to lift heavy objects like patients in hospitals, delivery robots, rehabilitation robots, and so on and so forth. I really could go on forever. Here is just a very short list of what we have. And so virtually all areas of our lives are already basically populated by robots. So it's not something that is very much about the future, but it's already there. And here's just some projections to substantiate what I'm saying. You know, or always, you see always the, you know, the graphical, you know, it's like always going up like this. You know, I've never seen anything, you know, like if you want to promote something, you don't show anything, you know, that points down. You show something that goes up. And I think we can state or identify a first megatrend in robotics is that robots are leaving the factory floors. They're moving into our own living space, the field, big field, emerging field of service robotics, which of course implies that we need completely new design requirements for the robots, because now we very closely interact with them. And the closer they get, the more important it is to understand them, you know, because we want to know what they're up to. Also, you know, maybe interact with other people. We want to know what they're up to. Same for the robots. And then we need to safely interact and comfortably interact with the robots. So let's look at the understanding for a bit. I mean, this was done basically mostly for politicians. A lot of what I'm saying now is, of course, for you very obvious, but let me just briefly go through this. If you go, I think I showed this a couple of weeks ago, remember, you know, having gone to school, I'm sure you remember this, I think therefore I am. Now what this suggests, this quote suggests, is a very head-centric or brain-centric view of intelligence. Everything is sitting up here. Now I think this is fundamentally misleading, and let me just briefly explain why. You have seen this, the Lego Mindstorms creatures. I think most of you know Lego Mindstorms. And whenever you observe the behavior of a system, be it a human being, an animal, or a robot, or a child, then you want to know why the person or the machine is reacting or acting as it does, or he or she does. So what are the mechanisms, or what is the control underlying the behavior? Now I'm going to show you a few. Nathan, I think I have to call on Nathan for the. Nathan, can you play the first 3 videos of? The first one here is Crazy Bird. Yeah, I think it's very nice. I like it. Can you play the second? I think it's okay now. Yep, good. And the third. Yeah. Very cool. Okay. So we saw 3 robots, and they behaved in completely different ways. Completely different behavior. Now, the point is that the control that's underlying the behavior of these 3 robots is exactly the same for all of them. Can you play the 4th video of this series now? It's just the wheels turning at a constant speed. That's it. There's no more to it. Now, but how is that possible? We have the same control, but the behavior is completely different. How is it possible? Well, the control is embedded into a different body, into a different morphology, and the material properties, morphological and material properties are different. And Crazy Bird did not only do one thing, it was doing several things. Well, how is that possible? Well, it has, as you can see here, it has these loosely hanging feet off the legs, and when it performs this kind of movement, there is a random component. And on the one side of the foot there is rubber, on the other there is plastic. If it does this, and on one side the rubber is on the ground, and on the other the plastic by chance, because of the difference in friction, it will spin around its own axis. And this is how you get different behaviors with just one and the same control. It's the same for all. So what is the message? Well, the message is that if you only look at the control, you have no way of knowing anything about the behavior of the system unless you know how the control is embedded into the physical system and you know the material and morphological shape characteristics of the system. Another example to illustrate that, you've seen that a number of times, the passive dynamic walker. It has no sensors, no motors, it has no microprocessors. It walks down an incline. So it definitely has no brain, right? But if you look at it, it sort of looks, I mean, it walks quite in a natural way. And so you don't need a brain for walking. Of course, there are always trade-offs. And in this case, the trade-off is that the ecological niche in which the robot functions is very, very narrow, namely inclines at a certain angle. If you change the angle, it's going to fall over. It doesn't work anymore. Okay, now the question that I've already asked, where's the memory for walking in this robot? Maybe someone, local audience here in Shanghai? Would you venture a hypothesis? Where's the memory for walking in this? Where's this ability stored in the robot? Well, there isn't a particular location. There's no microprocessor. Of course, there's no brain on this robot. So where's it stored? Well, it's distributed throughout the entire body, in the length of the limbs, the weight distribution, the shape, and the frictional characteristics of the feet. So this gives us a completely different view on memory. Normally we think of putting something in a particular location, and from there we retrieve it later on. It's very, very different. And I think in human memory is also not things stored at a particular location, but distributed throughout the entire organism. And this is the last one. Not done. Can you briefly play, just for the fun of it, the Stumpy, beginning of the Stumpy video?
Yeah.
It was a night, hell of a night, LA, it really was a water ride. Yeah, come on, it made my life feel real. Oh yeah, the beats and ship of corruption. Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you get the idea of this. And then the second point there is to interact safely and comfortably. Oh, by the way, Stumpy was lifting off the feet from the ground, when it was doing kind of this. It was lifting off the feet. If you only look at the control, it only has 2 joints. You can only do this and this. If you only look at the control, you cannot understand why it's lifting off the feet. There's nothing in the program that tells you that. You have to understand how the control is embedded into the physical system and what the dynamical characteristics are of the physical system. I think it's very important to understand. Okay, now let's now look at the design requirements. If you interact closely with these robots, they get really close, right? And there's an interesting fact about robots and humans. If you look at factory automation robots, like the welding robots we saw at the beginning, they're built mostly from hard materials, steel, plastics, hard plastics, and electrical motors, right? Whereas human beings are 85% made of soft materials. And there are 2 implications of this. The first one is the extreme versatility and flexibility of the human body. I mean, humans can do many, many, many different kinds of things. There is no robot in the world that even nearly matches this flexibility. I mean, there's light years between. And the softness of the material is presumably the most important characteristic, why this actually works. So if we as roboticists want to achieve this kind of flexibility and versatility, we need to understand bodies with soft materials. That's one thing. The second point is that in the interaction, if it's really soft, let's see, the tissue, the muscles and all that, you bump into someone, it doesn't really matter that much because it's soft, physically soft. So I think the safety of the interaction can be increased a lot by just having soft materials. I think these are really interesting points. And so we can identify a second megatrend, which is we are dealing with human-robot interaction and soft robotics. So that's a very quickly growing field, and also I hear here from my friends in China that the Chinese government is going to invest a lot of money into soft robotics in the coming years. So I think this is a great opportunity. So what do we mean by soft robotics? Well, soft, literally soft touch, soft movements, natural movements, soft, pleasant, and safe interaction. And let me show you or illustrate what I call the power of materials. It's really very important. So this is a traditional robot grasping. You can see precise control. Can you play the robot, traditional robot? Did I send that to you, Nathan?
Besides writing codes to program it directly, the embedded inverse kinematics algorithms we wrote for the U-arm enables it to be controlled.
So you can see position,
X, Y,
grasping, putting down,
controlling the servos directly.
Position, precise positioning, grasping. You know, that's the typical Cartesian robot. Okay, thank you, Nathan. By contrast, if you look at the universal coffee balloon gripper, so this is on the left, what you can see on the left is a balloon filled with ground coffee. I mean, if you go to the supermarket, I mean, coffee is not so popular in China, I know that. But I'm sure many people in Italy are now drinking coffee because it's early in the morning. If you go to the supermarket and you buy a pack of ground coffee, it's hard like a rock. But when you open it, it gets really soft, right? So they took a balloon, the blue thing there, and they filled it with ground coffee, and then they added a vacuum pump. And then they move with the balloon, they move over the object, as you can see on the right, and then because it's soft, the balloon is soft, you know, because it's filled with that ground coffee, it will automatically, without control, adapt to the shape of the object, any kind of object. Then they apply the vacuum, and the structure hardens, and they can pick up a large variety of objects with one and the same control. Now, can you play the next video, the coffee balloon gripper video now, Tom?
Then we apply a vacuum to evacuate the air from inside of the gripper and induce the rigid state.
It's always the same control here.
Even with this early prototype, we are able to grip many items that are especially challenging for other robot grippers.
Look at that, I mean, it's amazing. It's one and the same control. And for a standard robot arm, this would be a difficult task, believe me. And even the cup now. Pick up the cup, same control. It's really amazing. I find this absolutely amazing. Okay, thank you, Nathan. I once gave a talk for an industrial audience, and I had just about 20 people standing around me saying, where can we buy this? I think it's very interesting. It's a very different approach. So the adaptivity is entirely at the periphery in the material properties of the system. It's not some centralized control. I think this is important to understand. So we can identify a third megatrend, which is from centralized control to distributed control. So intelligent behavior as the result, not of control or only the brain, but brain-body-environment interaction. I mean, of course, for us, this is normal. Now, there's also a trend that I just put here. I'm not going to talk about that. It's that robots are no longer considered as individuals, but part of this human-robot cloud. So everything is basically connected, the big data center, the rescue robots, the self-driving cars, and so on. This is the fourth megatrend. I won't talk about it. Robots as part of an ecosystem. Okay. So back to service robotics. Virtually all areas of our lives, you know, the robots, and this is not the future, the robots are already with us. I mean, they are there. And one of the questions that we often hear is, well, if the robots get smarter and smarter, will they actually reproduce? You know, that's sort of a horror vision, you know, by many people. Robots, self-reproducing robots. Well, the point is that the robots have long since reproduced. It's just that and technology in general reproduces itself It's just that the reproductive mechanisms are different. They basically use the human beings, and they let the human beings build factories so that they can proliferate. And the good cars, it's like an evolution. The good cars, the popular cars, they proliferate, and they get more and more of them, whereas the bad ones, they get eventually extinct. It's just like Darwinian evolution. So they have been reproducing for a long time. They just exploit the human beings to help them reproduce. It's not the genetic mechanisms that biological systems use. So I think we've had that already, and it's already here. It's not the future, self-reproducing robots. Another question that people often ask, well, can we pull the plug on the robot? I don't like what the robots are doing. Can we still pull the plug? Well, forget it. We need them. Of course, on an individual robot, you can pull the plug. No problem. But we need the robots. I mean, we all know, and I think the whole information technology, computers, we need computers, robots. If we pulled the plug, it would not be one plug, it would be millions or billions of plugs, for one thing, and then I think that would be the end of the world. Financial system, the economic system, the logistics system, the food, transportation, everything, energy, everything would break down. I think it would be the end of the world. So we have no choice. We have to keep the robots running. Basically, we are already the slaves of the robots. We have to keep them running. We don't need to wait for evil terminators or something. And whether they have mean intentions or not is a purely philosophical question, not a scientific one. Okay? So again, it's not about the future, it's about what we have now. Okay, so the real question is not whether we want the robots or not. We already have them. But the real question is, in what direction should the development go? How can we guide the process without being overrun? I mean, we have been overrun by information technology. Just look at Edward Snowden and NSA, the surveillance and all that. I mean, we don't want that. We have been overrun, right? Because we weren't prepared for it. If 30 years ago we had had the opportunity to actually play around with mobile phones as we have them now, then we might have anticipated the development and could have done something about it. And this is exactly the purpose that we would like to achieve with the Robo Lounge, which is, the lounge where it's a social experiment where people can actually experience. But, I can talk about the future, I can tell you about the future. And then you say, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But here, the idea is that you can go there and you can experience what it will be like to interact with these robots. It's a public window for also robotics companies, technology companies, to display their latest technologies, and we want to build a community that actively participates in the shaping of the future. And many people that we talk to, they have questions like this. What will it feel like to interact and talk with the robots? Will they remember me when they see me? Do they have emotions? Can they get angry? Can they hurt us? Can they see? How well can they see? Can they smell? And so on. So this is the purpose of the Robo Lounge project. And the inspiration, or part of the inspiration, came from this Roboy project. Okay. Now I will go through this very quickly because last week you had a talk by Raphael Hostetler on the Roboy project. Here I even wrote it. See Raphael Hostetler's presentation last week. So we wanted to build a robot that nobody had ever built. This is this tendon-driven robot. And there's some tendon-driven robots. There's one at the University of Tokyo. There are a couple. There are tendon-driven hands. Many has a lot of advantages, but also a lot of disadvantages. But anyhow, we use it as a research platform, and it's interesting. We use it. It's as a research platform, also in the context of studying the brain. So we want to study the interaction of the brain with the body, because some people want to simulate. There's a €1 billion project in Europe for simulating the brain. And my colleague Alois Knoll from the Technical University of Munich convinced the people in brain science that the brain, and of course, if you just if I take out your brain and put it over here, it's totally useless. It has to be part of a body, part of an organism. Otherwise, the brain is useless. And simulating a brain in isolation is useless. And as a body, we use Roboy as a research platform, and it's well suited for this because it has, unlike most robots that have motors in the joints, it has muscles and tendons. And so it's much more closely to the functioning of the human being than normal robots. And so, for example, we can study a brain lesion, so someone suffers a stroke. We can simulate a stroke, a brain stroke, in the simulation, and because it's coupled to the body, embedded in a physical body, we can study the effects that this brain lesion has, these destroyed regions in the brain, on the movement system of the robot. But it should also be a messenger of a new generation of robots that share the living space with our own fun and friendly interaction. This you've seen. It's been in all the media, I mean, all over the place. And now it's touring the world. It was in Washington, D.C., in Zurich. And what's also interesting, it was at the CeBIT, a large technology fair in Hanover, in Germany. That was on the NASDAQ webpage. And what you also see here is emotional robots at Tech Fair X Factor. So I think a lot of this and a lot of the future interaction with technology is about emotions. Also, our interaction with mobile phones is about emotions. Take away the mobile phone from a teenager, and after 2 days, he or she will be ready for psychiatric treatment. So we have very emotional relations with technology, so I think it's very much about emotions. Okay, this is in Beijing at the Binghao Theater, and this, some of you maybe remember, at the ShanghAI Science and Technology Museum. It was great. I mean, the kids just freaked out here. You can see Professor Chen explaining the autonomous wheelchair and Roboy. And, we had it in Qatar. It was out sort of in the middle of the desert there. And we had a Roboy demonstration. And now I think there are many applications of Roboy, potential applications, understanding the musculoskeletal system, understanding brain lesions that I just mentioned, and anything to do with human-robot cooperation. But also we can use it as a receptionist in the Robo-Lounge. So coming back to the Robo-Lounge, here are some artistic renderings. This is by Matthias Klostermann, our designer for the Robot Lounge. Just, what it will be like here, a robotic bartender. Not really pretty, is it? And here a robot bouncer. We'll need a robot bouncer. That's the guy standing in front of the lounge, and the hooligans coming, keeping them out. I think that's it. Thank you very much. I have just 1 or 2 more slides, I think. Let's see. Yeah, this was done by Matthias Klostermann of Infinite Mind Studios. So see you all in the Robo Lounge in 2016. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Rolf, for this yet another great lecture. So, are there any questions or comments? Or people asking how to reach the Robo Lounge, when it will open?
Well, 2006. Well, we don't know yet, but hopefully at the end of 2016, maybe early 2017.
Yeah, I think I will try to pay a visit to you. Huh?
Okay, you're all welcome. Yeah, very welcome.
So, questions or comments?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. No, I may have a... Hi, Rolf. Okay. I may have a short question about the... so how you see soft robotics in the industrial applications? So your idea about how soft robotics could help soft industrial applications. So could sound obvious to someone, but maybe you have some cool ideas on that.
So what is the question? The
The question
application
is,
of software?
if you have some idea, some hints about how soft robotics could help in the manufacturing field, for example.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what we need to do, you know, there is still a lot of manual work in manufacturing, and we need to understand why it is still cheaper in many cases to use human labor to do the job, and that might actually relate to the fact that we have this, you know, soft tissue that enables us also with enormous sensing abilities, that enables us to perform certain tasks that today machines cannot yet do, and that may relate to the softness of the materials. So I think if we study what the characteristics of these manipulation tasks are, we can probably increase the level of automation in many companies. That I'm convinced of. Having said that, it's not necessary. You have to be careful. It is not necessary that the manufacturing process is done the same way that a human would do it, because often that's a stupid way of doing it. But I'm convinced that the soft materials will play an enormous role. I could imagine, for example, in the food industry, you have to handle food. You know, it's very delicate. So the food industry has very delicate requirements, or you know, you have to treat the food very delicately. And so I think there, soft robotics, you know, force control, and all those things, I think, can help increase the automation.
Okay, thank you. So if there are not any other questions, I think we can thank Rolf for yet another inspiring talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.